look, it doesn't matter which way you cut it. China is massively important to this country, and I think it's been amply demonstrated over the last few years. I'm apparently on record as saying once, apparently in exasperation, that without China we're buggered. The reality is, without China, we would have been over the last 4 years. Our second largest trading partner is the People's Republic of China. Our largest trading partner is Australia, and they are very dependent on progress in China. So all roads in terms of how New Zealand and Australia have done over the last few years lead to this amazing and fascinating country. Since the Free Trade Agreement in 2008, you probably heard these numbers today, New Zealand exports to China and Hong Kong have grown by over 134% over that 4-year period. And that compares to the 4% growth we've seen in our exports to the whole of the rest of the world, which of course, as you would know, has had some unders and overs, with the old world being a particularly challenging part. So you really can see the significance in that. Our imports from China have also grown by 52%, and as I said, China now accounts for 15% of all of our merchandise trade, and that is more than double the figure in 2008. So just in 4 years, it has become the second largest trading partner for this country. It has helped to offset the turmoil of the GFC for New Zealand and for Australia. And of course, China's government has also made it clear that New Zealand is a valuable trading partner for that country. We were the first and we remain the only OECD country to so far have negotiated a free trade agreement with China. And this year, of course, is also particularly special because it marks the 40th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. And I've noted from my visits to China that those two things are incredibly important from the Chinese perspective, as they are from ours. And that was followed, of course, by the New Zealand-China strategy launched by the Prime Minister in February of this year, with some clear targets for building on that trade relationship with China, with the aim to doubling two-ways goods trade to $20 million, so that's the wrong number, by 2015. We're all in trouble if that's the right number. Also seeking to grow the services trade and increase bilateral investment to help that trade relationship. So let's just take a step back and get into the wider context of this for a second. There's a lot of debate in this country about economic growth, and I think you could get most New Zealanders to sign up to the concept that New Zealand needs more and higher paying jobs in this country. Jobs provide income to support families, provide taxes to pay for the public services, including the ones we already consume and we don't quite match with income, and also encourages more people to base themselves in this country, not just those coming in, but those that are already here. So you get about 100% sign up for that, except perhaps a few people in the wild green movement in terms of growing more and higher paying jobs. Where it starts to differ is how do you achieve that? But I think most people in this room would know that jobs fundamentally depend on competitive businesses. If you don't have competitive businesses, you don't have more and higher paying jobs. And to have competitive businesses, most businesses depend on roughly about half a dozen things. They're not a big list and they're pretty well known to you all. Availability of capital, availability of markets, availability of innovation, which is very important, skilled workforce, for most companies, not all, the availability of resources, and also the availability of the supporting public infrastructure. Fundamentally those 6 things. So if you want more and higher paying jobs in this country, means more competitive businesses, which means making those 6 elements more easily available and competitively available to businesses. It's as simple and difficult as that. So that's what we're focused on with the business growth agenda. We've set up those 6 streams internally to government, and we're working aggressively with informal groups of ministers across those 6 streams. Released 2 progress reports, one on export markets, one on innovation. There's another one coming up in a week or 2 on skills and safe workplaces. But Bill and I launched the Building Exports Market report a couple of months ago, and that confirmed the government's target to increase the contribution of exports to the economy from 30% of GDP to 40% of GDP by 2025. Now that sounds really easy if you say it, but is actually very hard to achieve. Why 40%? Because most small advanced economies actually get to that level at least. And one of the challenges for this country is we just literally don't sell enough stuff to the rest of the world. We are literally too dependent on our domestic market, which, as we know, is really quite small. So it's a challenging target. I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly, but it's going to take a concerted effort over many years to achieve that outcome. But it's only through exporting that we're actually going to get this economy growing more quickly. The report also highlights the very significant shift in economic power from the west to the east, which is occurring now and will only accelerate over the next 20 years. My favourite statistic about that is the number of people in Asia now who are described as middle incomes, which is roughly 500 million people. And it's a very similar number to the number in North America, 500 million, and very similar to the number in Europe currently, about 500 million. The difference is that by 2020, that number is predicted to treble in Asia to 1.7 billion people. And by 2030, the estimates are that over 3 billion people in Asia will be middle income by Western standards. And meanwhile, in Europe, the number will still be 500 million, in fact, probably a little less than that by then. And in the US and in North America, it'll be 500 million as well. So that's a massive transfer of economic power over a very short space of time. I think it is the biggest economic opportunity that New Zealand has had since the UK joined the EEC. It's the biggest opportunity I've seen in my lifetime, and my biggest worry is that we ankle tap ourselves on the way to taking advantage of that opportunity. And that's why I think it's so important that the people in this room are actually motivated to take up that opportunity. It's massively significant for New Zealand. And even if the demographers and the forecasters are wrong, and it turns out they're out by 500 million, right? It's still going to be 2.5 billion. It's still 5 times the economic power of Asia than there exists today. And that's pretty impressive. So, to where the China relationship goes next. Well, fundamentally, it's about improving our access to that market and for New Zealanders to have the opportunity to achieve more in China. And I'll talk about that for the rest of the time that I'm speaking to you. First of all, we have the New Zealand Inc. strategy, and that's really about the government imprimatur to the activities of companies in market. And China is one of those markets where that can be quite helpful. And so we're certainly very pleased to help with that opportunity. But also it requires looking at new opportunities, and I think you've talked about some of these today, so I'll head through them pretty quickly. We've got a very significant part of our trade is in the commodity sector, and that's good. Certainly I'm not one of those people that says a particular sector is good or bad. I think it's important that we be growing our trade across all areas, but we will need to get more growth in the non-commodity sectors in our China relationship. And that means helping the Chinese see the New Zealand businesses as competitive and dynamic partners for their businesses. So our primary products are well positioned, but frankly we're just never going to have enough land to feed the Chinese population to the degree that they're going to need that. So it's going to be things like agri-technology, it's going to be things like IP, it's going to be a whole range of ICT services, of niche manufacturing services, all of those things that are going to become more important in this relationship and the areas where we have to drive ahead. And also education services, and not just education services in this country. China is already our largest international education partner. About 25% of the international students that come here are from China. It's more about delivering in market as well, and the partnerships that we can create with Chinese universities and Chinese polytechnics and so on. So there's a huge opportunity for us. Language can be a challenge at times, but I have to say, certainly from my personal experience, that there seems to be a synergy between our two countries that actually works together pretty well. And the people-to-people links where they are developed, they do seem to work particularly well, which is good. One of the key government involvements is through NZTE, and I see NZTE well represented here today. They are working very hard to assist, and they're one of the things I think that can help a small country that doesn't have a massive amount of scale extend itself into large markets, is having in effect a cooperative stream of people in market who can assist. So they've been facilitating lots of business missions into China. I myself have led 2 in 2010. I haven't yet seen any of my ICT buddies in the room, but it was a pretty good mission that we went on. And we also had the tertiary education one. One of my favourite stories, actually, and we had amazing access. One of my favourite stories is we went to see China Mobile, and we got absolutely the top brass of China Mobile. We went to China Unicom, we got absolutely top brass of China Unicom. We went to China Telecom in the same story. And I think it was at China Mobile. We were sitting there, and there was all us Kiwi entrepreneurs and the minister on one side of the table, some of us very small companies, and the other side, the chief technology officer from China Mobile and all these people. And they were telling us how business was, and they were dealing with a bit of an upswing in mobile connections from memory. They're going up by the order of 5 to 6 million a month. And all of us Kiwis sat there thinking, oh, absolutely, that's how it's working at home too. But the difference in scale is quite phenomenal. So NZT is very important in that regard. We also have a number of initiatives that they're doing at the moment. Substantial group of NZT customers that have China as a priority market, and they're working aggressively with them. They're supporting emerging exporters, and they're targeting evident sectors of opportunity for New Zealand businesses. And Peter may have spoken already today, but he talks about the Coalition of the Willing. And these are structured programs to realise the potential of sectors where there is key momentum and an opportunity to succeed. And in relation to China, that's food and beverages, high-value manufacturing, ICT and services, and natural products and bioactives. And we do, of course, have the Chef in Market program, where Robert Oliver promotes New Zealand produce in market in Chinese restaurants as well. And there's stacks of examples of success, and you've heard about some of them this afternoon, and you would know them better than me. But just for example, the recent Raycon deal with Huawei is a significant opportunity. In the agribusiness space, some of the work that Fonterra is doing is very impressive. There's opportunities in things like food safety, which is being developed across a range of agricultural commodities at the moment. There's 170 airports being built or planned in China at the moment. And of course, we have one company, for example, called Atrix, which is designing and manufacturing passenger baggage electronic weight equipment, and so on and so forth. And please excuse me if I've left you out. There's stacks of them, and we could spend the rest of the afternoon talking about the opportunities and the war stories, but I'm sure you've done a fair bit of that. One of the things that we think is important from a government perspective is to leverage New Zealand's reputation and brand image in market. And again, that's because we're a small country and we're operating in big markets. And I had this sort of epiphany as I was walking around Shanghai a couple of years ago and thinking, how do we make sure that the New Zealand brand is understood just in the city, let alone across the rest of China? And in any context, New Zealand is a small country and has small resources in terms of actually touching those large consumer markets. Being world famous in New Zealand actually, fundamentally doesn't cut it in this context. So what we have to do is try and bring our resources to bear in a unified way. And so we have our 100% pure New Zealand tourism brand, but we also have what NZTE does, we have what we do in education, but we do need to unify that so they all leverage off each other, and that's a pretty crucial part of the story. So as part of the export markets report, Tim Grosser and I announced that we're working on a broader New Zealand story, which is effectively telling our story a little bit better and a little bit more in a unified way that works across a range of industries. So we have a favourable international reputation, but it's making sure that we actually leverage that more broadly. So yes, it's absolutely about our beautiful landscape, but we also need to talk about our high quality goods and services, our innovation and ideas, our unique Māori culture, and also what I would describe as the way we do things, which is a difficult thing to define exactly, but it's sort of the human scale and the friendliness and the humility and the willingness to get things done, which is something that does mark us out a bit from some other countries in the world. So Tourism NZ, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise and Education New Zealand have the unenviable task of bringing together this New Zealand brand story, and I think they've already realised they have a massive tiger by the tail because of the level of interest that people have in terms of developing this story. So I'm glad they're doing it, but they're working on it at the moment. They've engaged 40 to 50 senior New Zealand leaders across the business and public sectors who have experience in diverse international markets to help develop the story, and also brand strategists and so on and so forth. So that's all working its way through. Can I stress again, it's not about replacing 100% pure. It's literally about making sure that we have a compelling, broader New Zealand story that works in the education sector, that works in HVMS, that works across the New Zealand brand. I'm confident that we can do that, and we can do that well. Another area that's important to discuss is the area of capital and capital investment. If you talk about growing exports from 30 to 40% of GDP in this country, then actually what flows from that is a couple of other interesting things. Firstly, that means very significant capital investment. To get from 30 to 40% of GDP over the next 13 years means that we will have to have a massive capital injection in our exporting industries. Treasury have done, in their inimitable fashion, a back-of-the-envelope calculation, which is that it's in the order of 250 to 360 billion New Zealand dollars over the next 13 years. And with the greatest will in the world, that's not going to come all domestically. That's going to involve international capital investing alongside New Zealanders. Only if you want to be successful, only if you want to take advantage of that opportunity. It also brings up an interesting question of, assuming we can obtain that level of additional capital investment, will it actually be able to be invested under our current resource management framework? And that's another discussion which I won't get into today, but it's one that Amy Adams, Bill English and myself are working very hard on at the moment. So therefore, increasing bilateral investment with China is also a strategic priority for this country. We simply can't provide enough capital on our own, and bringing in capital investment also brings in relationships, it brings in opportunities for New Zealand companies. So the China Inc. strategy aims to broaden and increase that level of investments as well. And there are some significant investments in recent times. The Bright Dairy Synlait investment, Agria and New Hope and PGG Wrightson, and of course the Haya Fisher and Paykel one, which is in the news at the moment, which is a partnership which has been developing in recent times further. And recent New Zealand investment in China as well, including Raycon's very big investment in their factory in Chengdu, and of course Fonterra as well in terms of what they're doing in China. So it is very, very important, and there has been some good progress there. NZT signing an agreement with China's Investment Promotion Agency, which provides information exchange about New Zealand and Chinese investment, which I think is important. And also I would note that the China Ministry of Commerce has forecast that over the next 4 years, offshore investment by Chinese companies and sovereign wealth funds will expand at an annual average rate of 17%. And will match the stock of foreign capital in China at about $700 billion. So they are very interested in investing, and we need capital. So it's just fundamentally something to work through on a case-by-case basis, but it is pretty important. So there's lots to do, and can I say how much I appreciate and am impressed by the sort of work person-like attitude that I saw in the breakout sessions this afternoon, which is very, very practical. But I just wanted to go back as I finish and remind you of the opportunity, because it is a massive opportunity. And the Chinese opportunity will not last forever for New Zealand. I still marvel at the fact that you go over to China and you sit there and you think, right, so there's 4.3 million of us, there's 1.3 billion of you, why do you care so much? And there's some very good cultural reasons why that's the case. And as we've talked about a few of them over the last 20 minutes. But the reality is right now, New Zealand is in a very privileged position in China, and New Zealand entrepreneurs and the New Zealand government is in a very privileged position relative to some other countries. So it's a massive opportunity, but it won't last forever. Things will change again. And so it's really important that we take advantage of that. And as I say, it's important that we don't ankle tap ourselves on the way to that success. We have to take advantage of our opportunities. We have to explain ourselves internally in this country. We have to explain ourselves in terms of taking advantage of the development opportunities that present themselves. We have to explain in terms of encouraging people that actually it is okay to have international investment in this country. We have to explain to people that it is fantastic that we have lots of young Chinese kids coming to learn at our universities, because they will go back to China and be advocates for New Zealand right through their working lives. That's really important. And actually, a little bit at the end, we actually need far more New Zealand kids to go and study a semester or two in China. We do way too little of that. And if we're serious, if we really think that we're the little country that's going to make hay and do the good job and get on well with the Asian community and work well between the Asian world and the European world and the Pacific world, then we actually have to walk the walk and get a few more of our kids to study in China alongside the Chinese kids, so that we have a far better people-to-people link from our perspective into those markets. So perhaps if I stop there, it's been fantastic to have the opportunity this afternoon to speak to you. Just remember, China is our second largest trading partner. I can only see it continuing to grow, and you people are at the front edge of it. So congratulations and all the best with your challenges and taking advantage of the opportunity. Cheers.